Hi kids! Welcome again to the Nolly and Trent Show. My name is Nolly, and this is Dinian. He's my helper.
Your helper, Molly?
I'm just kidding. He's my co-host. We're so happy you could join us on the Nolly and Trent Show. This is episode number...
Today we are on episode number 23, Molly.
Ooh, 23. Look at those numbers go, Dinian. We're doing amazing.
We are doing amazing, Molly. This is such a fun thing to do with you, and I so appreciate that we get to do this together. Today, however, Molly, we're talking about a topic that is, it's a challenging topic.
Ooh, what are we talking about? Let me see the notes. Oh, my. Are we talking about that?
Yeah, we're talking about that, Molly. Kids, today we're going to be talking about something that is, it may be uncomfortable, and we want to offer you a warning before you carry on listening in this podcast, because this is one of those topics that some of you might struggle with. And so we want you to know at the outset before you start listening, and if it's something that you don't feel comfortable with, please pause this and listen at a time when you're ready to listen to it. Because today, Molly, we're talking about when mom and dad fight.
Oh, my. This is going to be uncomfortable.
But you know what we do though, right, Molly? We have this podcast because we want to help our friends be able to think through difficult experiences in life, and we want to help them to be able to know how to do it well, because there's so many confusing experiences that we have in this life. And if I remember when I was young, Molly, some of these experiences, I needed some help to try and process them because I did not know how to think through them, and I wished I knew an adult who could help me think through these things. And so that's why we're talking about this. So again, kids, just a warning: if you feel uncomfortable about this topic, if you are feeling uncomfortable because maybe your parents are fighting and this is something that it just makes you feel really uncomfortable, please just pass this podcast for today. Come back to it when you feel a little bit more ready, perhaps, or if you want to listen to it with someone else that could help you process. That's probably one of those ideas.
Yeah, it's really good to look after yourself, right?
That's right. And sometimes we may not be ready to talk about some things because it still feels heavy and it still feels uncomfortable. So yeah, we're going to be talking today about when mom and dad fight, and a little bit about how we can help our friends at least be able to think through, and some options of what they could do in those times, because it can be uncomfortable. But first, what do we do, Molly?
Oh, I know. First, we do our feelings check-in.
That's right, Molly. Molly, today, how are you feeling?
Well, I was feeling really happy until now, because now I'm a little nervous, because this in here is going to get really, it's an important discussion, but I still feel a little nervous about it.
That's fair to say, Molly. Yeah, it's one of those conversations that we don't have very often, but we want to have more of these conversations, because the more we have them, the better we get at having them, and we make it more normal. When we don't talk about it, it feels kind of like, ooh, taboo, and we shouldn't touch that.
Yeah, I get that. Dinian, how are you feeling?
Molly, today I am feeling, I'm feeling a little bit sad, because I didn't get all the work that I wanted to get done today. And I had some hopes of getting a lot more work done. And on top of that, outside right now, it's getting a little cold this week. They say it's going to be super cold, and I don't like the cold.
Me too. I do not like cold weather.
And I like being warm, so I'm sitting here with like my warm blanket behind me, but I'll put that around me after our podcast.
Good idea. Kids, how are you feeling today? Tell us. Are you excited, or are you sad, or maybe some of you are angry because your brother and sister are so annoying?
Oh, I know. I've been there before too, right, Molly?
Yeah, me too. So that's what we want to know, is how you're feeling, because you matter.
Yes, you definitely matter. Your feelings matter. And we want to be able to create a space where you can explore and talk about your feelings and practice talking about them. That's why you and I do that, right, Molly?
That's exactly right.
Now, Molly, before we start, should we start with maybe a dad joke so that we can make this a little bit later before we get into our subject?
I like that idea. Let's do a dad joke first. Okay, are you ready for today's dad joke?
I'm ready, Molly.
Okay. How did Benjamin Franklin feel when he discovered electricity?
How did Benjamin Franklin feel after he did? I don't know. How did Benjamin Franklin feel after he discovered electricity?
He felt shocked.
Oh my goodness. So he was shocked because of his discovery. I get it, because of electricity shocks you.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you for sharing that, Molly. That was really good. All right. So let's maybe start off our conversation about when mom and dad fight by saying that almost everyone fights at some point. Like, we have disagreements sometimes. And it's just, it's one of those human experiences, isn't it, kids? That we can disagree because we have different ideas of how we should do things. Even Molly and I, sometimes we disagree, don't we, Molly?
Yeah, sometimes I think my ideas are better than yours, and so I say, no, we should do it this way. And then you say, how about this way? And so we have to talk about it.
That's right. So we all have disagreements. We all have different ideas because we're all so different. And sometimes when we have different ideas and we want to see our way go, we might feel a little bit upset if we don't get our way. And we might feel a little bit angry, and we might want to say, no, I want my way. Consider, for example, kids, if you're in the playground and you're all trying to figure out what game to play, and you want them to play the game that you're suggesting, but someone else wants everyone to play the game that they're suggesting, and then now you have disagreements and conflict and maybe a fight as a result of that. So we all experience what it's like to have different ideas, and what it's like when our ideas aren't chosen, or the way we want things to go isn't chosen. And that makes us feel kind of like, Urgh. And the reality is, not only kids have fights and disagreements, but adults also have fights and disagreements.
I know that.
You might know that, Molly, but I did not know that. When I was a kid, I thought adults had it all together. I thought they knew everything and that they didn't have any of those struggles. But in reality, adults do also struggle and fight. And when they have struggles and fights, sometimes for kids, it can get kind of scary because they can yell, they can like raise their voice, they can move very threateningly, and it could be scary. And so, like the fact that adults are bigger
And they're louder and they have more power.
That's a good point too, Molly. They also have a lot more power, don't they?
Yeah. And so I would feel really upset and confused if adults were fighting around me.
That's right. And the sad reality too, kids, is that moms and dads, even though they love each other, actually they don't always love each other. Sometimes, Molly, they don't love each other. That's another topic for another day. But even our moms and dads, when they have different ideas sometimes and they feel very strongly about them, they will express it through fighting. And for kids, it can be really confusing, like you were saying, Molly. For some, they might be scared when they see mom and dad fighting. Sometimes in some homes, they fight only once in a while. Sometimes kids may never see their parents fighting at all because the parents don't do it in front of the kids. But I think for many kids, there's fights that happen often. And the kids, I'm not sure if you can relate to this, our listeners, but there's a lot more fighting that happens like regularly, like almost every day maybe. They might hear it in their bedrooms where mom and dad are yelling at each other and saying some really mean things. And it can be really scary to think about the people who care about you the most, and they're fighting about how to raise you maybe, or how to spend money, or a whole bunch of different things that are grown-up issues. And so that could be really, really sad to experience.
I don't know how to do. What should we do about this?
Well, here's something I want you guys to listen to really carefully. And Molly, this is probably our most important point to share with our friends today.
Okay, listen up, kids. He's going to say something really important. What are you going to say?
Well, the really important point is this, Molly. When your mom and dad are fighting, it's not your fault. I'm going to say that again. When mom and dad are fighting, it's not your fault. Don't think that you're the one who's responsible. Don't think that it's your fault that they're fighting. Mom and dad are trying to figure some things out, but you're not the reason for them fighting. They may be fighting and talking about you, but they're trying to think about how best to raise you and how best to look after you, and they have different ideas of what that looks like. But it's not your fault. And I say that because so many of us kids, when I was a kid at once upon a time, I thought it was my fault when mom and dad were fighting, and we walk away with a sense of guilt maybe, and a sense of sadness that we're the ones who are the problem. and you're not the problem. So listen really carefully, kids. When mom and dad are fighting, it's not your fault. So remember that. I'm going to say that a couple more times. It's not your fault. And some of the things that you could do.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those, because I want our friends to know what they could do during this time. I like your point, though, that it's not their fault, because it isn't, is it?
No, it isn't their fault. But here's some things that you kids can consider doing if mom and dad are fighting, and it's making you feel really uncomfortable, and it's making you feel kind of scared, perhaps, and confused, maybe because you're just not sure what's going on. Are mom and dad going to stay together? For many of our friends, Molly, their moms and dads aren't together. Me and my ex, we have 3 kids together, as you know, and our kids, they could see mom and dad not together anymore. Now, thankfully, we don't fight like that. We have a really good partnership in raising our kids, but that's not always the case. And so kids usually see a lot. So kids, if you are in that space where mom and dad are fighting a lot, here's some things you can consider doing. Number 1, when mom and dad are fighting, consider finding a space where you don't have to be where they're fighting. Let them figure out whatever it is they're fighting about, but go find a quiet space.
And then what should they do in the quiet space?
Well, when you go to find a quiet space, one of the things that I found really helpful for me is taking deep breaths like this. Nice, slow, deep breaths.
Can I try?
Go ahead, Molly. Like that, yeah. How did that feel, Molly?
That made me feel a little bit more calm.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that helps me feel calm. So try that, kids. Take a deep breath. Sit in the silence, thinking about that deep breath and how it makes you feel on the inside, perhaps. Something else you could do is maybe listen to some music. Listen to some music in your headphones. Or maybe grab some paper and start doodling or drawing or maybe even coloring as a way of distracting you from what's going on as mom and dad are trying to figure things out. Another thing that our friends could do, Molly, is they could maybe also talk to an adult that they trust, someone that they look up to and admire. So kids, look for someone in your life who is trustworthy, someone who can have wisdom, who you think that's a smart person, and maybe share with them some of your experiences and some of your questions, because it's really important. Those feelings you're feeling on the inside, it's really important to feel into them and to talk about them, because if you don't, it gets bottled down and it does some awful things inside our hearts.
I don't like it when those kind of feelings get stuck in my heart, so I like talking about those things.
Yeah, but talk to someone who you trust, who you feel safe talking to. And then finally, friends, I want you to remember it's not your fault when mom and dad are fighting. They're trying to figure some stuff out. They really love you, I'm sure. They just have different ideas of how to go about looking after you. So look for ways to get some help from those that you trust, because there are ways for you to be able to go through these experiences, even though they're sad, in a way where you don't feel like you're the one who's making a mess of your whole life.
Those are some good points, William. Thanks for talking about this.
It's my pleasure, Molly. I hope this serves you well. If you guys have some questions for us, we'd love to hear them. Write them down in the comments below.
Dinian, can we say our last joke now?
Sure thing, Molly. Let's go ahead and say our last joke.
Okay. Kids, why did Princess Ella fall off her sled?
Why did she fall off her sled, Molly?
It's because she let it go, let it go.
I see, Molly. That's really clever. I like that.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Molly, this has been a fairly heavy podcast for our listeners. Thank you guys for listening in. It's a really important topic, and we want to talk about things that are very confusing and challenging for kids so that we can help you grow and experience life with some answers that could be helpful. Molly, we have one final thing we want to say to our listeners. Would you like to share with them?
Yeah, listen, this is my favorite part. You, our friends, are kind, you are smart, and you are so important. Thanks for watching our show today. See you soon.
Bye for now, kids. Thanks again.